The year was deep in the memory of snow. The old tongue called it Hrafnmun, when the wolf's shadow grew longest. In the northernmost hamlet of the fjord settled Hunsel, no legend yet stained the wild. The wind combed the backs of battered tents, and each dawn came edged with the taste of ice and salt. Children woke numb-fingered, and the elders carved tales of vanished gods onto driftwood, hoping to keep memory alive. On such a morning, the quiet before sorrow's arrival, two strangers footed the icy ridge above the settlement. One, broad-shouldered and copper-haired, was called Brynja. Around her neck, a wolf's fang nestled beside a polished jet stone. Her eyes, golden like storm sun, kept vigil over the landscape with the suspicion of one who survived 3 winters alone. The second, smaller, delicate-featured and hooded in a patchwork cape of mistfox pelts, was named Stalla. Her voice was the hush of snow falling, but her spirit was ferocious, a blackthorn springing through frost. The pair walked in silence, bodies adrift in the howling that marked the border between Hunsel and everywhere else. They came seeking not shelter, but an answer, a prophecy spilled under the fevered gaze of a dying crone whose words haunted every step. Where wolf's dream and woman's sorrow meet, the lay of the gods will be changed. The village of Hunsel stirred as they arrived, wary of the way the wind carried secrets. Old Torfi, the talekeeper, blinked at their approach and muttered warnings about strangers bearing omens. But Brynja and Stalla were not unfamiliar with distrust. It had shaped them since youth. Brynja, after a raid, left her family with only names and frostbitten hopes. Stalla, after the sickness came, taking half her kin in one choking night. Hunsel, for all its suspicion, could not deny hungry visitors. The pair were shown to a battered longhouse, its hearth choked by the remnants of last year's fish stew and the scent of pine smoke. Inside, the walls bristled with spears and shields, and a single banner, deep blue, the outline of a wolf stitched in silver thread, hung over the main post. It was Torfi's pride and the village's talisman, a promise that someday the wolves would return as protectors, not omens of death. As evening fell, Brynja ventured out, searching for river ice to melt and the space to mourn unspoken griefs. She paused below the wolf banner, drawn by a chorus of quiet voices. Women huddled together, sharing the names of the dead, then whispering blessings for the living. Each face was tight with sorrow, yet their hands moved with the certainty of necessity, chopping wood, mending nets, shaping stone charms to be buried at the edge of the tundra. Stalla, meanwhile, found herself beside the child Sigr, whose brother had vanished in the autumn storm. Sigr's eyes were hollow, but her fingers danced over the bones of a whittled raven, her only companion now. Stalla sat close, wordless, her own grief twining into the silence, until Sigr pressed the raven into her palm. He dreamed of flying, the child whispered, but the sky took him. Brynja returned to the fire, skin stung pink by wind, and glanced at Stalla's new token. Loss changes us. We carve it in wood, burn it in song, or let it echo inside for years. But always, it beckons, calling us beyond comfort. Torfi assembled the elders. A council called whenever strangers arrived, and the moon waxed fierce. There, stories unraveled, of the hunt that failed, the curse of frost on every crop, and the strange tales spreading like blight from nearby settlements. Word that the great wolf, Finrisulf, gnawed its way toward the world's end. As the meeting went long, Sigr's mother, Halla, burst in, the storm outside growing monstrous, thunder rolling like the god's anger. The Finns are wild, she cried, and something howls that's not wolf or wind. Brynja rose, the wolf's fang at her throat feeling eerily warm, and proposed, I will go to the marshes, perhaps what haunts us can be named. And if it is kin to sorrow, then let sorrow answer it. Stalla, clutching the raven token, nodded. Our grief is old. Let us see what new form it wears. Guided by torchlight, Brynja, Stalla, and Halla trudged into the night, the wind drawing lines of frost across their cheeks and painting the world in shades of blue and dread. At the edge of the marshes, darkness bled into a shimmer. Something alive in the mist, a pale shape hunched between reeds. The women hesitated. Brynja stepped forward, chanting an old rune for courage. The shape resolved into an immense wolf, its coat silver, its eyes reflecting not rage, but fathomless sorrow. The wolf spoke in the tongue of dreamers and seers, its voice crackling like fire on ice. You bear the marks of the lost. I, too, am bound by loss. My children taken by the gods, my mate by hunger, my pack by the shifting ice. What do you seek, humans? Brynja knelt and presented the wolf's fawn. I seek the end of hunger and doubt. I seek the joining of grief, so sorrow might hold us together, not apart. Stella pressed the raven bone to her lips, then placed it on the marsh grass. I seek memory, mine and all who vanished before me. Let grief become a bridge, not a wall. The wolf lowered its head, tears freezing on its muzzle. I dreamed once of a world where sorrow gathered not to destroy, but to create, where the gods themselves would weep for our losses, and their tears would heal. The marsh crackled. Hala, rigid with awe, whispered, "Perhaps the prophecy is not a warning, but a promise." The wolf vanished into the mist, leaving behind a paw print filled with moonlit water. In its reflection, Brynja saw her own tears, swirling with those of each woman beside her. They returned to Hunsel changed, hollowed yet hopeful, and the storm began to break. Old Torfi later claimed he saw the great wolf fleeing the world's edge, chased not by rage, but by the memory of every sorrow ever sung. That night, as sleep claimed them, the prophecy lingered. Where wolf's dream and woman's sorrow meet, the lay of the gods will be changed. And in the quiet corners of grief, a new promise dawned. When the dawn broke, Hunsel's village seemed altered, though snow still curled in the crooks of each roof, and the wind whistled its icy lament, a different note stitched through the chill. Brynja woke not to the hush of fear, but to whispers edging on possibility, elders and brides alike speaking of omens and promises. The wolf's visitation hovered like breath on the air, unseen, undeniable. Brynja and Stella spent the crisp morning wandering Hunsel's edge, studying footprints, wolf, raven, and human. Each mark was a story, and Stella's pale fingers traced them with reverence, seeking patterns that only those schooled and lost could know. Sigr followed, silent save for the soft click of the new raven token against her cloak. She watched Brynja, as if hoping strength could be taught by shadow and stride. The elders, Torfi with voice crackling as old leather, Hala with eyes sharp from last night's terror, gathered the village for decision. If Finrisulf stalks these lands, hope may yet linger in its dream, Torfi declared. But dreams alone cannot feed nor defend. Brynja stepped forward. We must act, or perish by waiting. Hunsel is not the only village to suffer. Word travels. Others are lost to sorrow's teeth. We must seek them, share what we've learned, and bind their pain to ours. Alone, grief devours. Together, perhaps it builds. Stella suggested a council be sent, not warriors, but weavers and listeners. The gods grew distant because we stopped telling them our stories. Let's carry our losses to those who need them, to make memory strong and not just bitter. The villagers agreed, if only because nothing else had worked. With cold courage, they prepared gifts made from wood and bone, woven ribbons colored by the blue wolf banner, runes scratched onto bits of driftwood. Even the skeptical, those who saw nothing in the marsh but mist, could not deny the change in the air. By mid-afternoon, Brynja, Stella, Hala, and Sigr, child witness to grief, stood at the village fork, snow swirling and spirits thick. Torfi gave Brynja a bloodstone pendant, for courage, but also for tears. Do not be ashamed to carry both. Their path led west, following the low sun and stories of a hamlet called Wiljoskold, a place where crops failed so often some believed the soil itself was cursed. The journey was grueling. Hala's hands bled from the rope. Sigr fell into silence, staring up at the shifting sky. Stella hummed, an old tune her mother taught her, spun from longing and hope. Nights on the road were agony. Bitter wind, frost on the lashes, raw memories. Brynja dreamt always of wolves, silver-coated, howling in pain, their calls echoing her own sleepless heart. Stella spoke softly to the air, telling the dead what she wished the living could hear. Sigr, half lost in sorrow, curled in Brynja's cloak, whispering her brother's name. On the third day, the council reached Wiljoskold's edge, a village clawed from the earth, homes sunken, faces shadowed. They were met not with welcome, but with suspicion. A man, broad as oak, eyes reddened by sleeplessness, challenged, "What do four strangers offer that the gods have already denied?" Brynja showed the wolf's fawn, the bloodstone, the tokens carved on Hunsel's stormiest night. "We bring a story, ours and yours, and every sorrow spun by winter's hand. We do not promise food, or fortune, or war. We offer memory, a way through the agony, not around it." A woman, her name, Svanhildr, lacquered in pain, stepped forward. "My daughter vanished in the last blizzard. Her bone, her laugh, gone from my house." She looked at Stalla and Sigr, and added, "If memory can feed me through grief, teach me your ways." That evening, the visitors led a ritual, a circle around burning birch branches, each person, visitor and villager, casting a token into the fire and naming what had been lost. The flames danced blue and gold, and the air trembled, as if the gods themselves bent to listen. Sigr stood, her eyes blazing, and told the story of her brother, carried away by the storm. As tears fell, she pressed her raven token to Svanhildr's palm, sharing pain as gift. One by one, Uljaskald's people opened up. The ritual was messy. Grief is never clean, but there was comfort in its chaos. By midnight, the fire burned low, and for the first time in months, the village slept without fear of the dead. Brynja and Stalla, exhausted, shared stories with Svanhildr and the oak-eyed man, whose name was Folki. He spoke of old battles, friendships lost, and hunger that haunted him. "Your wolf dreams mean little," Folki said, "but your courage, your way of holding sorrow, perhaps it means everything." At dawn, a runner arrived from the next hamlet, Soulstorn, a place where not even tears dared linger. There, it was said, people had turned against each other in the famine, and elders hid their pain behind laughter. Brynja suggested they go, and Folki, Svanhildr, and two more villagers joined them, bolstered by hope, or perhaps desperation. They brought the ritual with them, a circle of grief, a chance at memory. Through miles of snow and hard wind, they reached Soulstorn at dusk. The village was quiet, too quiet, and every doorway shuddered with unspoken pain. Stalla, bold despite exhaustion, sang a line of her mother's song. "In darkness, sorrow seeks its kin. In kin, the gods return." As if summoned, a child emerged, shielding a twig doll close to her breast. Her name was Astrid, and she offered no words, only the fierce grip of someone holding everything left. Brynja, Stalla, Sigr, Folki, and Svanhildr laid their tokens in the snow, forming a spiral. One by one, villagers stepped into the circle, naming what was lost, sharing the weight. The ritual grew, no longer a curse, but a quilt stitched by pain. By midnight, Soulstorn's laughter returned, not mocking, but restorative. The fire burned, and even the wind seemed to sing. The council did not linger. Sorrow remains for all, but is not meant to be carried in one place. Brynja knew the wolf's dream would take them farther, to the edge of the world, where grief shaped not only stories, but destiny. As dawn stained the sky, Stalla touched Brynja's arm. "You asked if loss could hold us together. Tonight, I believe it can." Brynja, holding Sigr close, whispered, "This is only the beginning. Grief as bridge, sorrow as circle. We walk on, and the story walks with us." Torfi's prophecy echoed as they moved toward the horizon. Grief, when named and shared, would change the lay of gods. And high above, in the northern light's shimmer, a lone silver wolf watched, and in its dreaming heart, hope was kindled anew. Days melded into nights as the traveling circle, Brynja, Stalla, Sigr, Halla, Folki, Svanhildr, and now Astrid in tow, followed the winding curve of the god's own breath, north into the wild. Their company swelled, each new addition woven in by ritual and loss. Each was both witness and wound. None believed themselves a hero, all known by what had been given and torn away. Forests loomed, ancient and gnarled, their branches frosted with tears and legend. Brynja led with sure steps, her token wolf's fang shining under her collarbone, pulsing with strange warmth when the wind caught from the east. In these wild places, the world listened differently. Shadows crept, sometimes whispering with remembered voices. Halla, eldest now that Torfi was far behind, limped a little from a twisted ankle but would not yield. We seek the place where old stories cross, where loss can be put to rest not in silence, but in song. She murmured this to Astrid, who answered only by clenching the frostbitten doll to her chest. The child had not yet spoken a word, but, in the night, sometimes Brynja woke to a soft humming, half lullaby, half mourning. They passed through the shattered bones of a once great steading, wild roses and birch sprouting through fallen beams, icicles draping an unused well. Here, Svanhildr insisted they halt. My mother was born here. They say the ground is salted with rage, that the river ran red when her kin vanished in the hungry year. The circle gathered beneath the lichen-clad stones, laying out tokens, a crow's feather, Sigr's raven carving, a scrap of blue thread from the wolf banner, Astrid's twig doll. Cold light slanted through the wood, brightening the offering. Stalla stepped forward, voice clear. We name what is lost and release what is carried. Let the gods see, and let us see each other. One by one, they spoke, or, in Astrid's case, simply pressed her doll into the snow. Shadows seemed to gather thickly, then thin. Brynja closed her eyes, feeling the wolf's fang pulse. In that moment, she saw a vision, a vast white plain, a she-wolf and her litter curled in sleep, silhouetted against the moon's bleeding edge. She opened her eyes to find the others staring, Halla shaking, Svanhildr pale. Did you see? Halla croaked, gripping her knee. A wolf and children, sleeping and then gone. Yes, Folki answered, voice rough. The past is not buried. It waits in the snow. That night, the group huddled together as cold gnawed at their bones. Brynja could not sleep. Something had changed. She heard Stalla rise and watched her step out toward the leaning stones, moonlight painting her pale and stark. Brynja silently followed. Stalla knelt in the snow, whispering in the old tongue. Brynja heard a name within the breeze, Rost, a word unfamiliar but thrumming with the weight of loss. What do you see, sister? Brynja asked softly. My mother's laughter, taken in the deep cold, Stalla replied. But I offered her name, and the wolf's dream stirred. Something calls, Brynja. The sorrow here is heavy, but the way forward grows clear. We must go north, to the lake where the gods sleep. Brynja nodded. If hope exists, that is where it will root. In the next village, Faldheim, the people greeted them with suspicion, ragged, half-fed faces, bonfires burning high to ward off more than cold. News had traveled ahead, of a company that named Sorrow and left healing. The chieftain, a woman named Ides, met them at the gate, her own necklace strung with amber and bone. Travelers, she said, what burden draws you to us? Folki answered, loss. We have learned to name it, together. We offer you our ritual, if you'll have it. Ides regarded them, eyes full of bruised hope. She gestured for them to enter, her people curling close and wary around the fire. That night, they performed the rite. Tokens given, grief spoken, Halla's voice joining Svanhildr's, Brynja's hand tight on Sigr's. Astrid, silent until now, stepped into the fire's glow and pressed her doll into Ides's shaking hands. For the sister lost, she whispered, voice small but sure. The village wept, but it was a healthy agony, a breaking before rebirth. Brynja saw that their wounds were not so different, and beneath the pain, a stubborn seed of belonging stirred. When they left, Ides offered a gift, a ring worked from river iron and blessed with her people's own chant. For the journey's end, she vowed, and for the gods, who are never as far as we fear. In the wild north, the land grew stranger, trees dwarfed by wind, snow so deep it glowed blue beneath each step. The travelers moved slowly, pausing often to build fires and share stories. With each telling, the wolf's fang burned warmer, and dreams took on the shape of prophecy, a river of sorrow running into a vast, misty lake, the wolf and her children, voices rising in chant. Svanhildr grew weaker, her breath ragged, skin flushed with fever. Folki and Brynja traded duties, keeping her warm, feeding her thin broth, singing old lullabies. One night, Svanhildr called Brynja near. If my time has come, she whispered, let it mean something. Let grief be a gift. Don't let it freeze your heart. Brynja wept, and Svanhildr pressed a ring into her palm. For the north, for the lake. Carry me in memory, not in sorrow. Svanhildr died before the next dawn, breath fading like mist. The company dug a grave in the willow thicket, singing until their voices went hoarse, naming all Svanhildr had given and lost. They buried her with the wolf banner's fragment and the last feather of Sigr's raven. The loss stung, but also stitched them closer. Even Astrid sang her name, a plaintive melody that rose over the wind. At last, after many days, they reached the lake, a mirror of white and night, frozen thick. Brynja knelt at the shore, pressing the wolf's fang to the ice, feeling its heat pulse through her arm. Stalla and the others built a spiral from all their remaining tokens: iron ring, bloodstone, bones, scraps of colored thread. Together, they chanted. The air thickened, the veil between worlds thinned. From the reflection, a vision surfaced, a great wolf encircling the company, its eyes silver bright, and a single tear fell, splashing not just on the ice, but into each heart ringed by sorrow. Brynja stood and turned to her companions. We walk with the wolf, dream and loss braided tight. The gods hear our grief. Now, let us see what can be rebuilt. Above, the aurora shimmered a wild green and violet, and in its light, for a fleeting instant, Svanhildr's shadow appeared, peaceful, at last unburdened. The lake, the company, even the gods had listened. Grief, at last, was understood as bridge, not chasm, story, not silence. The journey was not over. The dream would lead them onward. But for a moment, in that wild northern night, hope burned as fierce as any star. Their path turned south along the edge of the ice lake, where dawn colored the world with hesitant gold. The circle felt smaller without Svanhildr, her absence gnawed, but in its space, camaraderie deepened. Each loss was spoken and born together, a strength that surprised even Brynja. The river iron ring warmed on her finger as the wolf's fang did against her heart. Brynja, restless, led the march, but her eyes often searched the horizon for omens. Aurora, strange clouds, the print of paw or raven. The world felt alive, as if the gods watched not only from afar, but through the very wind. At night, the company huddled, sharing thin rations and stories by firelight. Folki grew pensive, speaking of dreams he could not shake. Wolves running forever, hunted and hunter at once. Hala confided in Brynja that she feared not death but being forgotten, as if lost with no witness doomed a soul to wander. Sigr clung ever closer, carving new tokens from fallen twigs, her hands quick and sure, her own memories stitched into each one. Stalla, still mourning her mother and Svanhildr, took to singing in the old tongue. Sometimes she'd chant not words, but sounds that made the fire burn higher or the wind drop to a hush. Folki, half skeptical, half awed, asked if the gods truly answered. They answer sorrow, Stalla replied. Every story becomes their echo. Sometimes the answer is only the courage to keep speaking. Astrid, ever silent, added a scrap of willow bark to the company's pile of tokens each day, her humming deepening in tone as their journey took them into darker forests. In the village of Drangerholt, the company found devastation. Homes burned, gardens salted, the crows thick among the ruins. Brynja knelt in the soot, sifting for those who remained. They found not warriors, but old women and children, their grief nearly mute. Hala organized a ritual, drawing a spiral in the ash. Each person placed a token: charred spoon, baby's moccasin, pebble blackened by fire. The villagers wept openly. Pain was raw, but not hidden. Brynja saw Astrid press her twig doll into an old man's hands. For a moment, the man's hands steadied, and tears became prayer. While Folki repaired a broken roof, Stalla sat with the children, whistling tunes. Sigr taught them how to carve memories from twigs and bones. Drangerholt's people, battered and hungry, began to respond. Brynja worked with Hala to scrape together a meal, sharing their few stores. Toward dusk, a masked stranger approached, face painted in wolf stripes. The villagers recoiled, fearful, but Brynja stepped forward. The stranger removed the mask, revealing scarred cheekbones and eyes as bright as the aurora. "My name is Erland," he said. "For years, I wandered, fleeing grief, not speaking it. Now I see what you do. Naming pain is power. May I join you? Folki welcomed him, sensing depth beneath the stoic voice. Erland brought with him a scroll, a tale of lost gods and of wolves unbound. That night, the company listened as Erland told of a secret myth that Finrisulf, maddened by sorrow, sought not to devour but to reunite what was broken in both gods and mortals. The wolf's dream was for a world where loss birthed kinship, not only ruin. As they left Drangerholt, Erland walked beside Astrid, speaking softly of the constellations. Each star is both a wound and a guide, he said. We follow their stories to heal our own. The path wound through storm-bruised forest, their numbers growing again. The old man from Drangerholt, a pair of orphan twins, Erland's quiet might. Each new ritual grew longer, the ashes of past pain mingling with tokens, stories told and retold till the burden lightened. Brynja and Folki debated the road ahead. Should they press onward, or find a place to settle, build anew with those who were left? Hala argued that motion bred survival. Stella insisted rest might at last bring peace. That night, as the company readied to sleep, Astrid startled them all by speaking, her voice clear, unbroken. The wolf's dream moves with us. If we stay, grief will find us still. If we go, sorrow may yet become song. Folki smiled, surprised. Brynja nodded, feeling the wolf's fong pulse in time with her own heart. They chose to journey south to Skjoldvik, a settlement said to be ruled by fear. The chieftain's loss had warped the law and forbidden any mention of the dead. The road was perilous, haunted by bandits and beasts. Erland led them through hidden tracks, relying on lore and the strange guidance of the stars. In Skjoldvik, they found silence made manifest. No mourning, no tokens, even laughter carried a hollow edge. Brynja requested audience with the chieftain, a stern woman named Margaret. She wore a circlet of iron, her eyes shadowed by exhaustion. Stella spoke first. We bring not trouble, but a way forward. Sorrow left unspoken is poison. Anchor your people in memory, and let healing begin. Margaret, skeptical, asked for proof. Erland unrolled his scroll, revealing stories and tokens from every village thus far, each loss named, honored, transformed. Margaret closed her eyes, fingers trembling. My son vanished last spring, she admitted. My law forbade grief because I feared it would swallow us whole. Brynja knelt, placing the wolf's fong before Margaret. Fear does swallow, but courage names the cost, and lets pain feed new life. Margaret allowed them a ritual. The company taught Skjoldvik's people how to speak the names, how to carve the stories, how to bury the tokens so new grain might grow. By sunrise, laughter, true, not hollow, echoed through the streets. Margaret wept before the crowd, naming her son at last. The law was changed. Before departing, Brynja looked back at all they'd changed, each ritual growing, each group of mourners now a seed. She felt the weight of old grief, but also the promise of new fate. The wolf's dream followed, and now, so did many hearts. Their story, and sorrow's journey, had only widened. They prepared to head west, to the sea, where myth and memory might yet offer new challenges. And as dawn spilled across the world, a lone wolf's call echoed in the distance, half mourning, half hope, urging them onward. The journey westward pressed the company into new lands, open tundra, wind-bent spruce, ancient stone scars. With each step, their legend grew. Word spread through fireside tales and the feet of wandering children that a band traveled with wolves and turned sorrow into strength. The night that marked their crossing from Skjoldvik to the coast glimmered with strange omens. Aurora twisted in wolf's breath shapes, stars flaring bright and brief. The company, now 9 in number, wound through scattered families and hamlets starved for hope. Erland's scroll unraveled longer with each rite, the record of every ritual, every grief spoken and healed. Astrid, her voice growing in confidence, began to teach other children the song of the wolf's dream, a melody half longing, half lullaby. Brynja found herself both leader and mourner, the wolf's fong at her neck pulsing with each new story. Folki and Hala guided the group through wild places. Sigr carved tokens of each village, distinct, beautiful, each a bond forged by loss. They arrived at the settlement of Hrafnsjord on the edge of the sea, a fortress of stone braced against waves and sky. The people here worshipped crows and wind, their rituals stark and unsmiling. Silence for the dead, gifts tossed to the tide, memories locked away. The chieftain, a man called Leifr, greeted them with wary eyes. "You come with wolves and weeping at your heels. What do you bring we have not suffered?" Erland answered, holding out his scroll. "We offer not escape from pain, but companionship through it. Each place we visited found healing in naming and sharing sorrow. Your dead are hungry for remembrance." Leifr replied, bitterness in his voice. "Here, grief is drowned. Pain belongs to no one, nothing, not even the gods." Stala stepped forward, voice gentle. "When pain is shared, it grows lighter. Let us teach you the ritual. We will carry your grief together, if you'll allow." Leifr hesitated, then summoned the elders. The company set the ritual at the shore. Tokens gathered from their own company, new ones fashioned from driftwood and black feathers, circles traced in wet sand, and the song of the wolf's dream carried on the salt wind. One by one, Hrafnsjord's people joined, tears breaking through old scars. Even Leifr confessed, his daughter lost to the waves, her memory locked away for years. Sigr gifted him a raven token. Leifr wept openly, and the tide, for the first time in recent memory, left behind gleaming stones instead of bones. Astrid led the children's circle, each carving and singing for their lost kin. Erland recorded each new story, the scroll growing heavy, golden runes printing themselves where tears fell. In the days that followed, the company learned the shore's oldest legend, the Raven Sisters, a pair of seers who once guided Hrafnsjord through famine with riddles, but vanished when grief grew too great for one to carry. Folki reasoned that the company's work now mirrored the old myth, shared riddles, shared wounds, healing birthed by community. Halla walked with Brynja along the bluffs. Every story we touch grows and changes. Even our grief, old as it is, can become the seed of something new. Brynja agreed, feeling her wolf's fawn grow warm as Leifr shared his daughter's name for the first time in decades. Across the settlement, people crafted new rituals, tokens buried for the coming spring, names spoken at the tides, feasts given in memory rather than in fear. On the last night, Leifr gifted the company a seal-bone staff, a symbol that sorrow, once shared, could become strength for the road ahead. The company accepted, vows exchanged, and their legend now official among the crow worshippers of the Western Sea. The company moved north along the cliffs. Their bond had grown unshakable. The losses carried had been acknowledged, and renewed hope lit the way. The wolf's dream echoed in new hearts. They met wanderers, traders, even a runaway priestess, Selka, who carried a pouch of golden seeds said to be blessed by the old gods of the north. Selka joined the company, telling her own tale of loss, the burning of her sanctuary, the scattering of her kin, the burden of a prophecy spoken at birth. Where wolves sing and humans weep, the gods will draw near. Brynja welcomed her, sensing both need and gift. "Your prophecy matches ours," she said. "If sorrow brings the gods close, let us make the way clear with truth and ritual." That night, the company made camp beneath ancient stones. Each engraved a wish into the seal-bone staff and planted Selka's seeds among the ruined ground. As they chanted, the aurora flared, the wolf's dream and the raven's riddle converging. Erland completed the scroll's first volume, tying it with blue thread. Astrid insisted they bury it among the roots of the oldest tree, that even memory itself should rest and renew. Before sleep, Brynja dreamt, a wolf chorus beneath the aurora, 9 travelers joined by gods who wept, sang, and planted seeds of hope. She woke certain their path would lead next not to settlement, but to the heart of myth, the place where sorrow itself was born. Their rituals, now legend, had changed hundreds of lives, but the wolf's dream led onward, promising that even the deepest loss could yet yield a harvest greater than pain. So they walked, the seal-bone staff leading, and the song of grief now burning as bright as the stars. Northward the company pressed, into lands where even the tallest pines bent to the wind and the sky was a shifting river of fire. The seal-bone staff, heavy with carved wishes, pulsed in Brynja's hand, its purpose not yet revealed. Selka, the priestess, taut new chants that braided together loss and longing, drawing children and elders to her fire each night. Their journey turned hard. Storms drove sleet and shards of ice across their faces, and rations dwindled. Yet, with each challenge, a ritual, tokens buried, songs sung, grief named, sustained them better than food. They learned that what they carried was not simply stories, but the shape of survival itself. Astrid, who had found her voice among the company, grew bold. More than once she led the naming. A child among adults, she recited names and losses until tears broke the hardened shell of an old farmer or stitched hope onto the memory of a widow. Folki built small boats from bark, sending tokens across every river they crossed, so the water might carry sorrow to the sea and spirit it away. The wild north beckoned with new rumor of a shrine called Skalberg, built on the bones of an old wolf god, deep within a valley shadowed by mountains. It was said all who entered must leave behind the memory they most feared to lose, and in return, receive a vision of what might be gained. Brynja spoke to the company by the fire. Skalberg is where loss turns to promise. If we are brave enough to face what we most dread. I fear forgetting those I have loved. Yet I would trade any memory if it meant hope for all. Selka agreed. The gods do not ask for perfection, but for courage. We go to Skalberg, and each of us will choose what to offer. The land around Skalberg lay silent as ash, but for the wind and the faint howling that throbbed from the frozen mountain passes. A ring of standing stones guarded the shrine, each stone carved with a single word: hope, sorrow, kin, memory, hunger, wolf. One by one, the company approached. Selka first, her seeds in hand, left behind the story of her sanctuary. The sanctuary burned, her kin scattered, and in return heard a voice in the wind. You will see them again, in time, among the healed. She wept, not for loss, but for a future she had thought impossible. Folki relinquished his eldest brother's spear, a token of pride and regret. The shrine pulsed, and he saw a vision, warriors feasting and laughing, in a hall where sorrow was a guest, not a master. Sigr pressed her newest carving, a mother wolf with 2 cubs, into the snow. Her vision was warmth, a field of spring grass, old faces laughing and making music together. Erland unrolled the scroll and tore away a page, his hardest memory, his flight after bitter defeat. In the wind's psalm, he heard forgiveness, and a promise that his journey would heal more than his own wounds. Hala buried her first knife, made in hunger and used in desperation. She saw, through the veil, children eating beneath the banners of every village she'd helped mend. Astrid, silent for a long while, finally gave up the doll she'd carried since her brother vanished. She received no vision. Instead, the wolf howl grew loud and real, then faded away, and in the hush she felt, for the first time, peace not pained by absence. Brynja's turn came last. She laid the wolf's fang gently at the base of the largest stone. I offer this, as memory of my family, and the loss that made me strong and weak. The shrine glowed blue and gold, and Brynja saw herself, alone and then, slowly, joined by all those she'd come to know and love. Each held her hand, and the wolf beside her was not just symbol, but kin. The sealbone staff cracked and split. Inside, the golden wish seeds Selka had brought spilled out onto the ground. The wind scattered them, and in the next breath, the earth around the shrine sang with growing shoots, promised that from sorrow, life is reborn. They camped that night beneath Skalberg's stones, comforted and changed. The company spoke softly, sharing dreams and new hope. None felt healed completely, but that was not the lesson. To name pain is not to end it, but to make room for connection. Before dawn, the aurora spread wild green and white, wolf's eyes across the sky. Selka told them, "We have seen the heart of grief. Now let us bring this ritual and wisdom home." Erland began a new scroll, this one filled with blessings, wishes, and the stories given at Skalberg. Brynja, seeing all she had held and released, felt the promise of the wolf's dream thrum with quiet joy. Their task was clear, a pilgrimage through legend and ragged heart, gathering sorrow and turning it into the seeds from which new kinship grows. Tomorrow, they would leave Skalberg changed, ready to teach every village what only pilgrims of the wolf's dream could know. When morning broke over Skalberg's shrine, the pilgrims awoke to filtered sunlight over frosted grass and the scent of earth newly disturbed by golden shoots. None felt unchanged. Grief now ran bright beneath their skins, a river of memory opening into hope. Brynja collected the scattered wish seeds and placed them in a leather pouch, promising aloud to plant some in every village they'd yet to visit. The company ate a meager meal together, sharing bread, laughter, and dreams about what would come next. Even Astrid, still mourning her brother, found herself humming Selka's chant beneath her breath. Selka led a dawn ritual beside the standing stones. We go as witnesses, kin to darkness and to each other. Let each step be both memory and blessing. She scattered a portion of the seeds onto the shrine. Behind her, Erland wrote a new blessing into his fresh scroll by the fire's last embers, the words weaving together the names and tokens left in Skalberg's care. The company journeyed east toward a cluster of settlements called the Twin Valleys, known for their ancient bitterness. Neighbor set against neighbor, feud rekindled by each new famine or loss. Folki cautioned that shared wounds did not always breed mercy. The path was steep, marked by cairns left as warnings, and the company sensed they were watched. At the valley's dividing crest, 6 hooded strangers blocked their way. Their leader, a tall woman with gorge-marked cheeks, called herself Njola. You travelers who barter grief, what proof have you that sorrow can heal what vengeance has stained? Njola's eyes never left Brynja's. Brynja stepped forward and offered the wish seeds. We have learned, she said, that when pain is spoken together, it births kinship stronger than any feud. Njola hesitated, but gestured for the company to follow. In the Twin Valleys, fear gnawed the edge of every word and gesture. Families built separate fires. Elders nursed old injuries. Children played at war in the dust. The newcomers were quartered at Njola's hall, given oat porridge and wary looks. Stalla, watching the twins and their arguments, whispered to Sigr, all families are haunted, but not all choose to be possessed. Sigr nodded, whittling a wolf's head for Njola's daughter, Ilsa, who followed them everywhere. That evening, Njola summoned both valleys' elders to a field marked by battle mounds. Brynja, Erland, and Selka conducted the memory ritual, teaching the children of both valleys to place stones and tokens on the mounds of their ancestors, not only those lost to time, but those lost to fighting. Astrid, breaking her silence, sang a line of Skalberg's blessing. Even the hardest faces softened. For a moment, old rivalries faded into curiosity, then into honest weeping. The sight moved Njola, who pressed a braided copper torque onto Brynja's wrist as a sign of respect. As the sun set, the company helped plant half their wish seeds in the ground between the 2 oldest feuding houses, marking each spot with a bone token and a new word, stillness. Over days, the company taught both valleys how to bury grief and tend it together. Folki led the building of a feast table at the boundary line, insisting both feuding clans chop wood and cook. Halla sat with Njola's aged uncle, showing him how to carve his wife's name into a birch plaque, her first memorial after decades of silence. Sigr led children from both sides in carving tokens for the lost, and everywhere they went, the story of the wolf's dream and Skalberg's vision grew. The villagers began to plant their own seeds, sometimes secretly at first. By the time the snow fell again, the first blades of green split the Black Valley soil, proof that something might yet take root. Njola invited Brynja and the company to the mounds again before they left. You have reminded us that to speak pain is to delay battle, sometimes forever. My people are still not healed, but my daughter will not forget your story or the gift of these seeds. The company left new songs behind, chants of sorrow and hope sown into the wind for Ilsa and her friends to share. As they departed east, Erland's scroll trembled with the weight of new names and griefs that no longer bruised alone. That night, camped beyond the valleys, Selka said, there are places in the world forever torn. But now, in these valleys, a bridge has formed and it will endure as long as memory is tended. Brynja looked at her friends, at Sigr's hopeful eyes, Folki's easy grin, Halla's quiet strength, Erland's serious weaving of words, Astrid's settled peace, Selka's light, and her own hands, calloused but no longer empty. She pressed the copper torque and wolf's fang together, feeling them thrum with a new song, one of loss named, grief honored, and the first promises of real forgiveness. Eastward, the company journeyed through thawing woods and open fields hemmed by rivers. The air tasted of damp earth and old leaves. Villages grew farther apart, the land marked more by barrow mounds and blighted woods than by the laughter of children or the smoke of hearths. Eyes followed the group from behind frost-laced branches and through broken palisades, some full of hope, others heavy with suspicion. The company felt changed, not just by their journeys, but by the gifts of Skalberg and the valleys. They now walked more slowly, aware that each encounter left a mark as lasting as any scar. Sigr and Astrid braided grass into bracelets and hung them on the branches they passed. Selka sang in the mornings, soft prayers for the absent and the yet-to-be found. Folki and Jola's copper torque upon Brynja's wrist flashed in the sunlight, a silent reminder that bridges can grow from even the deepest divides. Days passed before they reached Vidarns, a settlement crouched along a black river. The houses built all of stone, narrow and tall, with narrow windows and narrow hearts. Vidarns lived in the shadow of the barrow wood, a cursed place by all account. Rumor said wraiths lingered there, those whose grief was too great, whom even rituals could not release. The company entered humble, weary, and met the town's leader, an old shield maiden named Ragna. Her hair was white and coiled like driftwood. Her face seemed by battle and weeping. When she learned of their coming, she only shook her head. In Vidarns, sorrow is not spoken. Our dead are nameless. Each person bears a stone for every loss, hung about the neck, but we do not gather. Ritual only feeds the restless. Brynja, Folki, and Selka pleaded for a chance. Let us try. If our way fails, we'll depart with respect. Ragna led them to the edge of the barrow wood at dusk. Every villager, children, warriors, old and infirm, stood in silence. Necks weighted with stones etched with runes for those they'd lost. Wind howled through the trees. Shadows seemed to twist, thick as breath. Astrid stepped forward, lifting the grass bracelets for all to see. Our grief binds us if we hoard it, but if we share it, even the land can be healed. Her voice, though small, was unafraid. A hush fell. Ragna laid down her heaviest stone, knelt, and named the first of her fallen, her daughter, slain in a winter raid long ago. Selka chanted, inviting others to add their stones to a growing cairn. Sigr and Stalla placed grass and tokens atop the heap. Folki pressed his hand to Ragna's shoulder as she wept, and soon others followed. A bracing gust of wind swirled through the wood. For a moment, Brynja saw shapes in the darkness, old ghosts, faces bright now, lingering but not menacing. The air lightened, and an owl called from the trees. With each name spoken, and each stone surrendered, the villagers' shoulders seemed to rise, the burden lessened. By midnight, the cairn stood shoulder high, garlanded in wild grass and tokens. The dead were not banished, but honored, and the barrow wood stood quiet, its curse undone, or perhaps merely sated. Ragna invited the travelers to share her table. You have done for us what war and fasting never could. You have turned the stone of grief to the bread of kinship. She pressed a stone, her last, into Brynja's palm. Erland added the names and tokens to his scroll, noting that in this place, healing required surrender, not struggle. The following day, the villagers of Vidarns held their first open mourning in generations. Astrid led the children in planting grass and seeds round the cairn's base, promising that in spring, flowers would bloom where only sorrow had stood. As the company left, their hearts felt lighter, yet Brynja grew restless. We are nearer to the world's edge, she murmured. My dreams grow strange. The wolf's voice calls out, but it is not for me alone. There is another sorrow following, a shadow our rituals have not yet reached. Selka nodded. Perhaps the greatest grief must be faced not as a circle, but as oneself. One heart, one story, confronting the old hunger before it devours all. Folki, Halla, Stalla, Erland, Astrid, Sigr, their weary faces turned toward Brynja. If you would go on, we do not leave your side, Folki declared, and the rest echoed his pledge. That night, Brynja sat alone beneath the stars, holding Ragnar's stone and the wolf's fang. In the half-sleep before dawn, an old god came to her, a woman cloaked in midnight fur, whose eyes held both every birth and death. "You have named many griefs, daughter," the god said in a voice that was both howl and lullaby. "But the last sorrow is yours alone. Face it, and the wolf's dream becomes the world's waking." Brynja woke at once, the sky pale, the wolf's fang warm against her skin. She rejoined the company and said, "We must go north, to the cliffs of the world's end, beyond even Skalberg. The wolf's dream calls me there. Whatever happens, all I have learned must be given, not kept." With food, seeds, tokens, the battered scroll, and the love of her companions, Brynja led them onward, towards sorrow's final keep, and the moment when grief, faced without flinching, might birth something greater than myth. The northern march tested body and heart. The company moved through stunted woods, snowfields shadowed by the mountains called the Old Teeth, and at last onto a barren plain where the wind sang at every step. Brynja led, Ragnar's stone and the wolf's fang tucked together at her neck, pulse doubling with anxiety and purpose. As they advanced, silence deepened. Folki broke the hush by telling stories, some from their journey, some from childhood. Sigr and Astrid braided old tokens with grass and gold. Erland sketched their progress into his battered scroll. Selka watched the sky, reading omens in the shivering aurora each night. In the distance, a wall of rock rose, the cliffs of the world's end. Beneath them, an ancient shrine shaped like a wolf's head, mouth agape, eyes carved as endless tears. The path split, and Brynja felt it, an invitation and a warning. "We have come as far as sorrow will carry many," she said. "But the last grief is mine alone. Wait here, hold vigil, and if the gods will it, I shall return." Folki gripped Brynja's shoulder. "You changed us by speaking pain. If there is one grief no ritual can soften, do not let it mean you are alone." But Brynja knew, the wolf's god had spoken true. This moment, faced with bare hands and heart, was hers to meet. Brynja walked into the wolf's shrine. The air was thick, part mist, part memory, and her breath echoed off the stone. She was not sure if she walked or was led, not sure if she was alive or remembering youth. The mouth of the shrine was lined with tokens left by countless mourners, bones, beads, silver hair, scraps of knotted cord. Within, she met the old god again. This time the wolf woman had no kindness in her face, only deep grief and knowing. "You bring what the world cannot bear alone, and you offer what most do not name. Are you ready to make the last gift?" Brynja held up the wolf's fang and Ragnar's stone. "I am afraid," she whispered. "Fear is the root. All sorrow feeds on it. But in its naming there is freedom," the god replied. Brynja knelt and named every loss. Her family in the fire, comrades lost to storms, warriors whose eyes never saw spring, kin abandoned by fate, all the moments when hope slipped and left hunger behind. With each word, the air grew heavier. She wept, not silent, but raw, tears and breath like battle cries and lullabies. The stone in her hand burned, turned to sand, then ash. The wolf's fang cooled, pulsed once, and faded. "Speak your greatest sorrow," the god commanded. Brynja closed her eyes. "That the ones I love leave, and what I build passes. Memory itself will someday vanish from the world." For a long moment, the god was silent. Then, she reached out, pressing one clawed hand to Brynja's chest. "Grief is the price for love. The wolf's dream is not to end sorrow, but to bind it, so none must grieve alone." The shrine's shadows twisted, then parted. Brynja saw the faces of her company outside, faces of hundreds from ritual and journey. Some living, some dead, some yet unborn. She saw Sigr carving new tokens, Astrid singing old names, Folki burying hatchets, Selka planting seeds. She understood, at last, that sorrow was not a thing to be cast away, but a thread woven through every life. The wolf's dream was not a world without pain, but a world that made room for kinship, memory, and hope within the hollow it left. As dawn broke over the cliffs, Brynja walked from the shrine, changed, but not unburdened, weighted now with the world's grief and its promise. Her companions rushed to her. Sigr pressed a grass bracelet into Brynja's hand. "You came back," she whispered. Brynja nodded. "I did, but not as I left. There is one gift left. The tellings, the rituals, the bridge we built. The wolf's dream is ours now." That night, the company lit a final fire below the cliffs. They renewed their pacts to carry memory, tell sorrow, plant seeds, braid grief with hope. Erland wrote the last lines in his scroll. Selka sang to the sky. Folki retold the hardest stories, and Astrid and Sigr braided tokens for every dawn yet to come. Brynja watched the northern lights unravel above. In every shimmer, she saw the wolf's dream made true, a story that endured, even when sorrow was its first word and love its last. The season turned as the company made their way south from the world's edge, the cliffs behind them a wavering dream on the horizon. Their pace was unhurried now. They walked in step with river thaw, bird call, and the gentle emergence of green from frost-stripped soil. Where once each token, chant, and tale felt like a casting off, now every memory named was a seed for the next life, the next hope. As they entered familiar lands, villages remembered. In Skjoldvik, children watched eagerly for Sigr's carvings and Astrid's singing. In Hunsel and the Twin Valleys, fields had flourished around cairns and wish seeds planted by trembling hands. Vidarns kept its mournful cairn, now thick with spring flowers instead of only stone. Everywhere, grief had changed, from a mark of shame into a sign of kinship. Rituals caught on, tokens in spiral formation at each equinox, open telling of the year's losses, children's circles at dawn to recite the names of both living and dead. Folk who had clung to sorrow alone now found arms to steady them in the night. Brynja and her companions did not resume the wandering life immediately. They rested, tending soil, planting Selka's remaining golden seeds in memory gardens beside each hall or hearth. Folki left a spear at Hunsel, retiring to quiet teaching. Halla, her hair gone entirely white, led rituals with a careful gentleness. Selka's prayers became legend, her morning blessings, a comfort for those who still feared dreams. Sigr taught the art of token shaping to whole generations of children, each carving passed from hand to hand until its memory, pain, and meaning merged with the wood's grain. Astrid, whose voice had returned so late, became the village's tender of stories, her lullabies a gift that lingered in the dusk long after the fire embers died. Erland, with the help of those who could write, copied the great scroll in many hands, and not only in words, but with images, tokens, and pressed wildflowers. Rituals once begun in desperation now banned silence from loss and celebrated those who returned from even the furthest journeys. But the bond that pulled the company together was more than death or memory. On the anniversary of Svanhilder's passing, the group reunited beneath the wolf's shrine at the cliffs, travelers, villagers, and all new kin who joined since. Together they lit a bonfire, singing both old god songs and new, their voices rising above the tundra wind. In the fire's light, Brynja addressed all, her voice carrying not only the weariness of journeys but the fairness of healed wounds. We named our griefs and did not end them, but what we made, these gardens, these rituals, each other, endures, even as the world changes and we change with it. The wolf's dream is ours now, to live through sorrow and to hold kinship close. The night was spent in storytelling, laughter, weeping unashamed, and the planting of wish seeds for every dream, lost or not yet found. As dawn warmed the cliffs, an aurora glimmered low and fleeting, its colors dancing across hundreds of faces. In its shape, children swore they saw a wolf's silhouette, watchful, gentle, carrying the memory of those gone and the hopes of those who would come after. Brynja pressed the wolf's falm, now worn smooth, into Sigr's hand. Take it and lead well. Every ending is a new telling for those brave enough to begin again. As the company broke apart, returning to homes, founding new villages, teaching new rituals, each carried the saga within, not as a burden, but as a song. For in the age that followed, sorrow bound no one in lonely silence again. The wolf's dream endured, in gardens, tokens, chants, and generations who learned that love could outlast even the deepest loss if nourished with memory, shared in kinship, and made holy by hope. And so the story of Brynja, Sigr, Folki, Halla, Erland, Selka, Astrid, and all those who joined or grieved or dared to begin again, a story born from loss and sorrow, became the world's own promise that every grief, once witnessed and woven with care, might yet yield strength enough for another dawn.